Probably the most popular fruit out there is the apple. With its bright red color that's often used as a metaphor and allegorized into figures of speech. But did you know that harvesting apples isn't as easy as it seems? You don't go around in an apple orchard then pluck it from the tree. Apple harvesting goes through a lot of processes, and we're excited to share this with you today. How have you been, guys? Welcome back again to our channel. In today's episode, we'll be covering the complicated process of apple harvesting. So if you're curious to know how the apple in your fruit bowl made its way to you, make sure you tune in to know more. And before we get right into it, you know the drill. Hit that like button, and while you're at it, subscribe to our channel with the notification bell on so you won't miss out on any of our newest uploads. But first, we'll share with you some interesting facts about apples. Apples originated in Central Asia and came from their wild ancestor called the Malus sieversii, and its species still exists today. They were grown in Asia and Europe and made it into North America by the European colonists. Apple trees are cultivated from all over the world and come in two other colors aside from the bright red hue we know so well. They also come in green and yellow. In the United States, there are over 2,500 varieties of apples grown alone, but throughout the world, there are an estimated 7,500 varieties of apple grown and cultivated. According to a report shared by Statista in March 2021, India is the leading country in terms of producing fresh apples, followed by Vietnam, then China. In 2017, apples were the second most produced fruit in North America, wherein they produced around 5.7 million metric tons of the fruit. So how do you harvest apples? There are several things to consider when producing apples, especially if you plan on growing the type that has a juicy and crisp texture with a bright red hue. But even before harvesting, growers take into consideration the harvest window of these fruits. With that in mind, we'll be sharing with you some of the factors that apple growers consider for their harvests. Cultivar ripening times. Harvesting apples is affected by cultivar ripening times as well as the year's crop load and weather conditions. Cultivar ripening times pertain to the different time frames when the fruit matures, just like the vegetables in one's backyard. For others, cultivar ripens as early as July, and the latest comes in around October or November in milder climates. Soil conditions. As soon as they're planted, it takes apple trees 3 to 4 years before they bear fruits. Apples are best grown in zone 3 to zone 9 soil, especially in well-drained, loamy soil, and they can even tolerate colder temperatures as low as -40 degrees Fahrenheit. They don't normally tolerate warm and moderate temperatures. That's why they don't grow well in places near the ocean. They grow best in a neutral soil pH of 6.0 to 7.0 and must be protected from prevailing wind or breeze, and it's also important to keep in mind not to plant apples where previous apple trees have been planted, since pests and disease may still be present in the soil. Weather conditions. Usually when you buy an apple tree, the vendor will tell you information regarding the harvest season of the tree you purchased and if it's ready for harvest early, mid, or late in the season. As such, growers keep a gardening journal to take notes of the tree's ripening time, then refer to it the next time around. Apples grow in cooler climates, but they do ripen quickly in warmer weather. On the contrary, apples take a bit more time to mature when the temperature is a bit colder, so with these two contrasting climate conditions, growers sometimes end up harvesting apples at different times from weeks to years. Crop load. Another important thing to consider when it comes to the fruit's maturity is the crop load, or when you have a lot of fruits covering the tree. Trees with fewer bearing fruits mature quickly in contrast to those with a lot of fruits. So, when you're checking their maturity and prepping for harvest, have a look at your trees to see if they have a lot of fruits or not, which will help you determine the best time to pick them. Determining ripeness and maturity. Now that you've determined if your apples have a large load or not, we can finally determine their ripeness and maturity. But first, let us explain that there's a significant change between an apple being mature and being ripe. Ripe apples are generally sweet and can be eaten as soon as they're picked from the tree. They make the best ingredients for pies, baking, and other food preservation items. On the other hand, mature apples are a little short of being ripe. You can, of course, eat them as they are, but compared to the ripe ones, mature apples have a starchier texture and they have a more tart flavor. When harvested, apples will continue to ripen more, but they'll hold up for a long time if they are managed and stored with proper care. Growers often prefer to pick their crop in the mature stage, and professional growers start testing their maturity at least 2 weeks before their expected harvest time. During this time, the apples will be checked for their color, firmness, and starch content. Fruits generally mature on the southern side of the tree, so if you're testing for maturity, it's best to start there. Growers also keep in mind the optimal harvest window, which lasts for a week up to 10 days at max, so it's important to get the timing right and be attentive to the trees. Color is another thing you should check for when it comes to the fruit's maturity. If you ignore red areas of the skin, the remaining color is the background color. When many cultivars mature, their background color changes from green to yellowish green or golden. Overripe apples tend to have a dull color compared to mature ones. Aside from color, firmness is another thing to check out. Try picking an apple and feel it in your hands. Mature apples feel firm to the touch, not rock hard, while overripe ones feel soft to the touch. But like other factors to check, it's difficult to cross this one out until you do a taste test. Stem test. If you've checked the color and firmness of the fruit, another thing you could do is take a stem test. What you do with the stem test is that you choose an apple of the southern side of the tree, then gently rotate it. If it comes off easily, then you can consider it as a mature fruit. But if it doesn't, it just simply means that it's not ready for picking yet. Flesh color. Now, if the fruit you picked up has successfully passed the color, firmness, and stem tests, it's time to check its flesh color. Flesh color can be checked by slicing the fruit in half, and fruits which have a whiter flesh color or have a yellowish cast is an indication that the fruit is mature. On the other hand, fruits that have a greenish tint to their flesh indicate that the fruit is not mature yet, so better do another test in the next few days. Taste test. Now that you've cut your apple in half, it's time to taste. Take a bite of the apple you picked and do your best to evaluate its firmness. If it's too hard, then it's too early to harvest. But if they do pass the firmness texture in your mouth, ask yourself this: is it giving your mouth a puckering feeling? If yes, then they are still on the immature side. Immature apples are not only tart, but they are also astringent, giving your mouth that puckery feeling, which also makes you feel like you have cotton in your mouth. Instead of feeling cottony, a mature apple should feel crisp when bitten and will be tasting a bit starchy, but not too much like the immature ones. As the fruit matures, these starches become sugar, giving it the sweet taste. If you took a bite and all you got was the feeling of cotton and too much starch, then the fruits need more time to mature. If you've checked all of these items, it's best to pick a few more apples in your tree and check them as well before you fully harvest their batch. Fruit doesn't always ripen all at once. The side that gets the most sun will ripen more quickly. So, you may need to harvest your crop in batches over a week or so. Harvesting apples. Finally, we're on the last part, harvesting the fruit. Remember, a few moments back when we advised you to gently twist the apple from the stem when picking it, that's also how you'll be harvesting the rest of the fruits, and make sure you do it gently so as to not yank off twigs and branches of the tree. But sometimes harvesting apples doesn't proceed as planned. At times, growers encounter circumstances wherein an apple falls from the tree before it has reached maturity, or when frost and freeze are on the way. In the case of fallen apples, they may come off due to being ripe, or in some cases, because of infestation caused by codling moths. These immature apples won't ripen anymore, and eating them will cause your mouth to pucker. They can be used for compost though, or food for sheep and other farm animals, or better yet, as a baking ingredient. If you will be using this for baking, make sure you cut out the damaged parts before you proceed with using it as food. On the other hand, if you're worried that the frost or freeze will soil your apple, it's best to keep in mind that apples could hold the cold temperature until the temperature drops to 29 degrees Fahrenheit. If a light frost is on the way and the apples are still not quite mature, it's perfectly fine to leave them up in the trees as they are. If it's a hard freeze though, there's a chance that your crop may be damaged. As bad as it is, it's best to pick as much out of it as possible before frost takes over your harvest. And with that, we're concluding today's topic regarding the complicated process of apple harvesting. Did you learn a lot about harvesting apples? Hopefully you did. And before you go, make sure you've already hit the like button on our video and subscribe to our channel with the notification bell on if you haven't yet. We'll see you again next time, and thanks for watching.